but today we're meeting virtually. This is our maiden voyage, and we welcome you. I thought that we would try something today during this briefing session, and then again at the end of the actual hearing. Maybe we could have a little fun doing this. So here are some suggested ground rules that I'm asking your permission to use today. Number one, please indulge delays. They're bound to happen, but enjoy the experience. This may be the future. It doesn't need to be stiff. It doesn't need to be technical. But we also want to evaluate this meeting, and so that others can use it as well to learn how they're going to run their meetings. So what we'd like to do is test these ground rules. And so I'm asking your permission to see if we could use those today. One of the biggest concerns we have is about interruptions. So we'd like to have a procedure. When a speaker is speaking, particularly a board member, they, in essence, own the mic until they're done. And so we'd ask you, if you're speaking today, to use the words, "I'm done," to signal everyone that you are, in fact, ready to have others speak. Please don't speak until you're recognized by the chair. When you do speak, try to announce yourself of who's speaking. And that will help the viewing audience and help the other folks that are waiting in turn to speak. But in the meantime, if you're not speaking, please turn your mic off until you're ready to speak. I think this will avoid disruptive background noises. For example, I can hear some on my phone, on my headset right now, some kind of disruptive background noises. If you want to speak, just make sure your hand is visible in the camera. And that way I'll know that you are in line to speak. Please make your face visible. Center yourself in the camera. And if someone has expertise on a particular issue, don't be surprised if I call on you. There's also circumstances where we need to wait to have the computer program telecast your voice. There is a lag time between the time you speak, and on some of the headphones and some of the people listening, there's about a 1 or 2 second lag time during part of the program. Please leave your cell phones on, but please mute them. Also, please leave your keyboard alone. The sound of typing can be distracting. If you do want to type, turn your mic symbol off. Remember, this meeting is being transcribed, and we can make sure that you get a copy. Here's a good one for you. Try this one. Please don't multitask. This is an important meeting. And board members, if you need to call Mike Begley, please do that. It is appropriate. Please stay in the here and now and stay tuned into this hearing. We're going to try and use normal procedures. The attorney for the applicant or the person speaking in the briefing will introduce the players, qualify the expert witnesses or whatever, and then we'll follow the practice of entering exhibits into evidence at the end of the applicant's presentation. I've asked board members Chris Hansen and board member Mike Brown. I've given them the job of making sure I don't miss something. And so I've given them a secret signal. It looks like this, to let me know that I've skipped something and to stop at that point and look at where we are. I'm asking the rest of the board members to accept the job of making sure that they can hear and everyone else can hear. Today for our meeting, we're going to try to discuss as much as we can as a board without going into deliberations. When we do have a point in time where we're going to vote, we're going to ask Julianne to do a roll call vote, and then at the end of it to give us the count. I think the board has jurisdiction in this virtual meeting over all persons and subject matters that are going to be involved. We're going to try to validate, as each witness is presented, that we can hear the witness and the witness can hear us. One of the things that we want to make sure we do is that we take breaks at the normal times, but please expect that we may take breaks at any time if it looks like we're running into a technical issue and the technical team lets us know that we're kind of having a problem. Speaking of technical team and staff, many of you have family members who have health issues and have concerns at this time. Our sympathy goes out to you. We know you have worked more, 24/7 for 2 or 3 weeks to get this together. And we certainly appreciate it, and we send our condolences. And finally, I just remind you, after the meeting is adjourned, we are going to have a quality control discussion about how the meeting went, what worked, what didn't, and how we could make it better for the next time. Are there any comments or directions from the technical team at this time?
Chairman, good. We are good to proceed. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Is the court reporter ready?
I am.
Okay. Well, let's, for the record, let's have each of the board members in alphabetical order, starting with your your last name, introduce themselves for the record. I'm Chairman Ruland Gill.
I'm Richard Borden.
I'm Michael Brown.
I'm Susan Davis.
I'm Stephen Church.
I'm Gordon Moon.
Chris Hansen.
Okay, that worked well. As we start today's briefing session, I'd like to remind you that today is Earth Day, is being celebrated, and it's also Administrative Assistance Day. And we want to thank all of you that are part of this program, that are administrative assistants. One that we enjoy and work with very closely is Julianne, and we want to thank her and recognize her on this day. So with that, we will start our briefing session. I'm going to turn it over to Director Baza.
Thank you, Chairman Gill, and thank you, members of the board. This is John Baza, Director for the Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining. Welcome to this electronic meeting, and we're glad to be participating in it with you. There's a couple of short announcements that I have before we start into item 1 on the agenda. The first is that the division has received the assignment of a new attorney working for the division from the Attorney General's office. and her name is Hailey Souza. And I'm going to provide some brief remarks about Hailey, but I'll let her get online and answer any questions that you might have. First of all, Hailey is a Utah native. She's born and raised in Spanish Fort. She is married with one child, 2 dogs, and a cat. And they enjoy being outdoors, whether they're skiing, hiking, camping, or gardening, etc. here in Utah. She has 8 years of experience as an attorney, including 6.5 years in the energy industry. Prior to coming to the AG's office, she worked for an electric utility for 5 years. And before that, she worked as a regulator in the electric utility field. So Hailey, do you want to come online and just say hi and answer any questions the board may have?
Hello. I think Director Baza pretty much summed it up for me, but if you have questions, I'm happy to answer.
I think we can say as a board, I can speak on behalf of them. Welcome, Hailey.
Thank you.
Board members, any questions of Hailey? Seeing none, we're back to you, Mr. Baza.
Thank you, sir. And the second announcement that I want to make as we go forward today is the Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining is operating very well under the COVID-19 precautions, procedures, and processes that we've been asked to participate in. State government is open for business. There is a skeleton staff that appear in the division offices every day. They're conducting work. We have our field inspection group out doing work. As much as possible, we're trying to maintain work and normalcy. And I really want to take this time to acknowledge and thank all the members of the division staff who are diligently trying to achieve the objectives of the division. I especially want to thank and acknowledge the technical team today. Paul and Michael Van Hatten and Carmen and Michael Christensen have worked very hard to get this meeting up and running. And Julianne has also done her best to try to ensure that we've got a good and productive meeting online today. So thanks to all of them, but I just wanted to let you know that there's a lot of work behind the scenes going on, including division staff and the technical team, and we're trying to get it done.
Thank you, Mr. Baza.
With that, I'll launch into the first item on our agenda, which is to update you on the Environmental Excellence Awards. As you know, we canceled the March board meeting. That was the first month we were into these precautionary measures. And this month we're online. We had talked to both the Utah Petroleum Association and the Utah Mining Association because we were going to collaborate with them and do a joint award ceremony that was supposed to take place in April. They have postponed that activity for at least a couple of months and maybe indefinitely, depending on how long the virus precautions are in place. But obviously that is a large group meeting, something we don't want to have happen at this time. So when they indicated they were postponing the ceremony, we made a decision as a division that we could forego the presentations to the board this month. And now that we're doing this electronic meeting, we can reschedule those at some point and have those presentations done remotely. But because of the delay in the award ceremony and the time we have now to proceed forward with the Environmental Excellence Awards, we felt we could put that off for one more month. I'm hoping that doesn't cause any of the board members concern, but we would be ready to start that up and do those presentations at the May board meeting as necessary. Do you have any questions on that?
Are there any questions, board members? Seeing none, we're back to you, Director Baza.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to item 2 on the agenda. Normally, we would have done a legislative update for you immediately after the close of the legislative session. But as we did not have a March board meeting, we're going to do that now. And Natasha Baloff is going to present to you the information on that legislative update. And she's also going to provide you with an understanding of what the timeframes are for rulemaking related to any legislation that was passed this year. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Natasha at this point, if you'll come online and go ahead and brief the board on our legislative update.
Yeah, of course. Good morning. Again, I'm Natasha Baloff. So we had 3 bills that passed that will really affect us. The first one is SB 131. This was Senator Hinkins' bill, and it changes small mine sizes from 20 acres or less in unincorporated areas. Or sorry, it changes it to, hold on, I wrote that word. Changes it from 10 acres to 20 acres or less for small mines in unincorporated areas, and then from 10 acres or less in incorporated areas. And this one will require some rulemaking. It will affect about 20 mines. And our understanding is the intent behind it was to allow some strategic material to be mined without as much red tape, but still keep the size manageable and keep the division involved in regulating them. So we do believe that it will encourage smaller operations to open new pits, since the requirements for small mines are less stringent than those of a large mine. The second bill is HB 294. This was Representative Brooks' bill, and it exempts basalt operations from going through a permitting process. And this one will also require rulemaking. The sponsor wanted this to be very narrow and apply to a certain type of geology that's found in southern Utah. Basically, it's just beneficial to move this basalt so that they can access sand and gravel. This bill will remove around 5 currently permitted operations from our jurisdiction, and it may allow for more operations to start up without a permit in the future. So those 2 affected minerals. This next bill affects oil and gas. This is SB 148. This is Senator Okerlund's bill, the one that we had a lot of help from Chairman Gill on. So this one passed. It gives bond review requirements, as well as asks the board and division to establish a violation schedule, which would set violations and the associated administrative penalty for each one, as well as necessary actions to cure the violation within a reasonable period of time. So this one will have, obviously we'll have to do rulemaking. It'll be a lot more in depth. And all 3 of the bills are scheduled to be effective on May 12th, which means that we have 180 days to get rulemaking in place. And that deadline is November 8th. So for planning purposes, the informal rulemaking process should really start as soon as possible. And then we'll have until August 28th before we'll need to start the formal process to give us enough time to have it completed and in place by November 8th. That was all I was going to present. Unless you guys have any questions, I can answer them.
Board members, any questions of Natasha? And thank you for that nice report, Natasha.
Yeah, no problem.
Chairman Gill, this is Mike Brown. I have a question, but it's for Dana Dean.
Is Dana on the line?
Hello?
Hi, Dana. Question regarding this small miners change. Can you just quickly review for the board members? And I know we have some rulemaking, but what does that do with respect to bonding and reclamation requirements? Because I understand the desire to circumvent quote unquote red tape, but it also brings with it the potential for abuse for reclamation and bonding. So could you please review that very quickly for us?
Yes, bonding should not be much different. The only difference will be, instead of using site-specific costs, they will be able to use the average per acre cost if they choose so. We feel that those are accurate numbers, so we're not worried about that. And as far as reclamation goes, there are less stringent requirements for small mines, so that could be that could be an issue. We would hope that the industry works with us, and if there are problems there, that that the legislature would also work with us to maybe
Did that
change
answer
the
your
small mine
question,
rules if needed.
Mr. Brown?
Well, she wasn't quite done, but yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Pardon me, I just lost video.
Did we lose Chairman Gill?
It sounds like his feed froze up. I would ask the technical team to try to make contact and see if they can help him out.
Dana,
Please copy Director Baza.
sorry, Chris. Dana, thank you for answering my question.
No problem.
I might add to that I think Natasha may have mentioned it, but it's only going to affect about 20 mines out of the over 650 that are currently permit in the state of Utah. So there will be 20 mines that will move from what has previously been a large mine category into this small mine category.
Director Plaza, this is Mike Brown again. I guess, you know, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but those are all precisely the mines that we typically have enforcement issues and inspection. They seem to be less frequently inspected. Can you balm our concerns a bit about that?
Well, I know the division tries to pay attention to small mines as much as large mines. I think the change that will principally occur will be in the permitting requirements. I think bonding is relatively similar, although there is a annual rate at which we brief the board on, at which the small mines are bonded at. But I think principally when a small mine gets permitted, initial permitting, that's where what they call some of this red tape might be relieved, is that there would be no need for a large mine plan approval or anything like that, that it's much less stringent in terms of the permitting requirements. But in terms of inspection, and Dana can help answer this, I believe that the inspection is just as rigid for a small mine as it is for large mines.
Yes, this is Dana again. That is true. And we, as Natasha mentioned, we'll need to do rulemaking. And in our rulemaking, you will see that we're going to propose that small mines need to mark their boundaries somehow. Because we found that the majority of our enforcement on small mines is when they go outside of their permit area. And many times the people operating the equipment and that are on the ground don't know where the permit boundary is. So we're going to ask that those be marked with stakes or fences or somehow. And we feel that that will really reduce the amount of non-compliance on our small mines. So you'll see that as part of the rulemaking that we propose later.
Thank you. I'm done, Mr. Vice Chair.
Director Baza, if I could interrupt for a second. I have Chairman Gill on the phone, and he's asked that Chris take over as we work through the technical issues. It looks like we do have a communication problem at his site. I'll have another update in about 5 minutes.
Chris, you're muted.
I'm sure other people wish I was more muted, but I will do so. I had a question on the second issue that Natasha was talking about, the bill that allowed for the potential to remove basalt to get to the gravel in southern Utah. Is that strictly what it's about? Is just removing the cap rock so they can mine the gravel pit? And I assume then that the county would regulate the gravel pit at that point. Is that correct?
I think we may want to have Dana help answer that question as well. Because as I understood it, and this was the legislator from Southern Utah that proposed the bill, it is very specific to the kind of geology we have in Southern Utah. So maybe Dana can step in and talk about that a little bit.
Yes, this was proposed by Representative Brooks from Southern Utah, and he wants it to be very narrow and to apply to a certain type of geology where they are removing caprock that's associated with sand and gravel. We have run into, after the bill was passed, we've run into some definition problems. So our rules may have slightly different definitions than the statute. Representative Brooks did promise that if we had any troubles over the next year, that he would change the statute to fix any problems such as the definitions and things like that. We plan to meet with him once we can start meeting again, just to make sure that in our rulemaking, we are still following what his intent of the statute was. And then we can decide whether the statute needs to be tightened up next year or not. But it was very definitely meant to only apply to a small number of operations in the state.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mr.
Just one follow-up question, Dana. How thick are these basalt flows that are over the sand and gravel deposits?
I'm not sure. Paul Baker is on. He may be able to answer better than I can.
So this is Paul. The bill doesn't define the thickness that would be involved. So any basalt operation that's smaller than 50 acres would not be subject to our regulations. The ones that he was particularly targeting, I would say, are probably in the neighborhood of 10 to 20 feet thick. But like I say, the bill doesn't define it that way. It just says basalt. But like I said earlier, though, it does limit it to operations that are smaller than 50 acres. We do have some permitted operations that are larger than 50 acres that we'll continue to regulate. So I'm done, I think.
I see that the chairman's back on.
I am. Thank you. I got disconnected for just a minute. I don't know what happened, but I'm back. Thank you, Vice Chairman. Okay, we're back to you, Mr. Baza.
Yeah, so we are completed the legislative update item 2, and we answered some board questions. Are you ready for me to move on to item number 3?
Yes, please.
Item number 3 is, and we introduced Bart Kettle, who's our new acting deputy director for the oil and gas program. Bart wants to introduce some new staff and also give you an overview of what's been going on in the oil and gas program. So Bart, I'll turn the time over to you, and I believe he has a presentation that he wants to share with you.
Thank you, Director Baza. It'll take me just a second to get my screen on the present mode and get my presentation up, if you'll bear with me. Also, because my presentation will pick up my complete screen, if somebody could let me know as it's available to the group, that would be helpful.
Okay, Bart, your first slide is up.
Okay, so Bart Kettle, Acting Deputy Director for the Oil and Gas Program. I'm on to take just a couple of minutes here this morning to talk about some of the items the Oil and Gas Program has been working on, introduce some new staff members, and also relay to the group some of the items that we're planning in the near future. I want to take just a second and talk about this slide because I find it to be very true in where we're going. It seems as if as we get more resources or as our technology evolves, our process changes. And I think that this hearing that we're doing today is a classic example of that, in that as technologies evolve, we suddenly have the ability to do a board hearing electronically, where in historic times, we would not have had that ability under these circumstances. So I kind of like to relay back to this. We are seeing within our group as we make technology changes, our process is also affected. And I would like to take just a second to thank the oil and gas program staff on how innovative they've been to solve the challenges they've got through process changes or through technology, and also how hard they've worked to get to the point we are. It's through their efforts that we have made the progress we have made. And so just briefly, some of the accomplishments that we've been able to complete here in the last few months. As you may recall, we had a legislative audit in November of 2019, and it listed 105 items that were not current as far as the compliance. I'm happy to say all of those compliance items are current now. We're working through the last group of them. We've been able to really improve our coordination with the Attorney General's office. Hailey and Gordon are a big part of that. I'd like to thank them. We were able to deploy a program called Inspection Prioritization in January. I believe that was presented to the board in the February meeting, if I recall correctly. And it just helps our staff have better information to make the most informed decisions they can make as to what sites they're going to review and in what order they're going to do it. We're working with the Department of Technology Service to find better ways for the use of technology. They've become a pretty nice partner of ours. We've updated categorization for tracking. That helps us with metrics. That helps us look at reports and know where we're at. We've completed our first electronic inspection form. We've done some field testing with it. It's a fairly basic form, but it does work. We're now working on the process of integrating the information from that form into our database in a live sequence, in other words, daily. We've completed the process of giving nightly updates from our database for spatial data to be used offline. This is actually a pretty big step because it will go hand in hand with electronic forms in the future, to where our staff are able to go out to remote sites and have all the information they need at their fingertips in real time. We're nearing completion of a contract with the Groundwater Protection Council for additional upgrades to technology, and we've hired 5 new employees. I'd like to take just a second to introduce those 5 new employees. Carson Pope has joined us in the Salt Lake office. Carson is a member of the audit group. He will be working on investigations, bond review, and report completion. Carson's an avid outdoorsman who loves rock climbing, hiking, backpacking, camping, skiing, and home brewing. Carson looks forward to using his background in political science and natural resource management in his career. Also in the Salt Lake office, we have Colton Goodrich, who has joined our program. Colton's an environmental scientist. He's a member of the engineering group. Colton will be working on application for permit to drill review and sundry review, as well as helping with workflow and information management. Colton has a master's in geology and a geospatial analyst certificate. He has 3 years of industry experience as an earth scientist, and Colton is looking forward to using his background in geology, computer science, and geospatial analytics to improve business functions and improve use of technology to create faster workflows. Colton has already been able to help us with a couple of those items. In the Price field office, we have 2 new employees. Travis Gray is an environmental scientist. He's working in the operations group, overseeing all aspects of inspection and on-the-ground administration. Travis comes to our program with 14 years of industry experience. He spent 10 of those years as a supervisor. His expertise in downhole well production work, well completion, and plug and abandonment. Travis is very active in softball, baseball, and has spent many years as a dirt racetrack driver in modified race cars. Travis is very excited to learn and do new things in an industry he has lived in for so many years. Also in our Price office, we have Dal Gray. In spite of the fact that both of the Grays are from a rural community in Utah, they tell me they are not related. So we now have 2 Marks and 2 Grays in the Price office, a little challenging to keep track of. But Dal Gray will be joining the operations group also as an environmental scientist. He also will be overseeing all aspects of inspection and field-based administration and oversight. Dal comes to the division with 22 years of industry experience, 7 years in a management position. Dal has expertise in well site supervision, downhole operations, completions, fracking, production work, plug and abandonment operations, and surface reclamation. Dal's an avid outdoorsman, enjoying time spent camping, hunting, and fishing. And Dal is looking forward to applying his industry understanding and his passion to regulation with the goal of creating an atmosphere for orderly and sustainable development. Last but not least, we have Mike Perkins, who joined our program in the Vernal Field Office. Mike is also an environmental scientist in the operations group. He will be overseeing all aspects of on-the-ground inspections and oversight. Mike has 19 years of industry experience, 9 years as a supervisor. Mike's expertise is in drilling, completion, plug and abandonment, and cement operations. Mike enjoys spending time with his family, fishing, and being in the great outdoors. He's super excited to build a working relationship with new coworkers and apply his industry knowledge to the regulation side of oil and gas exploration. So the things that are coming next for us, we've actually got a pretty ambitious plan scheduled for us over the next year. Some of the things that we're currently in process of working on, automating the compliance process, automating the permitting functions. We're working on inspection prioritization. We're working hard to integrate electronic inspection forms into the database. That project's nearly completed. And as it's completed, that will allow us to finish the automation of spatial data for offline use. We're looking forward to additional use of drones for our program. We're working on facility sundry notices, upgrading the amended APD approval, and a couple of projects that are planned. Some of them are actually starting. Some of the groundwork is being done on them right now beyond planning. We're looking forward to electronic forms for the inspection portion of our program, an electronic user interface, i.e. a dashboard. An example is shown below. And we have started actually some of the groundwork on smart forms for Sunday notices and reporting. And we're looking forward to filling 3 additional positions as budget and time allows. So, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to take any questions from the board.
Thank you very much, Bart. Board members, any questions? Seeing none, Bart, I'd like to just congratulate you for the depth of experience that you're bringing with these new hires. And we welcome them if they're on the line at all, but they sound like they have got terrific experience and will be a great addition to the team. Thank you.
Yes, we feel very fortunate to get them, Mr. Chairman.
We are back to you, Mr. Baza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The other items on the agenda, I have one other item to cover with you. It will probably use up the rest of our briefing time. I don't have much to say about the agenda for next month or the calendar. I think those are still in flux right now. But the one thing I did want to cover, and as you and all the board members know, the economic situation in the oil and gas industry continues to change by the day, and it becomes more dire even as we speak. But I think John Rogers did a short white paper and broadly distributed that to different people. I believe board members got a copy of that.
Yes.
But I've asked John to come online and to just give you some brief highlights from that report and what it might mean for us as a division. So John, if you're on the line, would you please come on and take care of that?
Okay. Good morning, Chairman Gill, members of the board. If you had read that report, I really started working on that because oil, say a month ago, was in turmoil. And I thought, let's see what's going on. And so when we really look at this, And it's not rocket science, but it's supply and demand. And as we see the Middle East continually produce more and more oil, and then with the coronavirus taking the demand out of the picture, we have really seen oil drop. As I looked at it drop below 20, I started to panic. And then yesterday or 2 days ago, I saw it go under 10. And then when I saw it go to negative 10, 20, 30, 40, I thought that must have been a typo. I thought oil can't go negative. But in reality, it did. And this is how this is working. I watch the future markets in great detail almost daily. And that's how we forecast what we're looking at down the road. And to give you just a brief understanding how the future market works is people will buy oil out into the future to be delivered on the third Tuesday of every month. So what happened here is people were buying contracts to take oil in. And as capacity to put oil in certain storage units, the refineries are full, everywhere is full, they could not take ownership of that oil. Therefore, they had to pay someone to take it. That's how we got the negative number. As we look now, it's now bounced up. So futures for June look at about 1450, July 2175, August 24, September 26 to 27, and October 27. So as we see, it's going to inch up to that mid 20 range in the future. But right now we're having a rough go of it. And really, as we look at this, the thing that's going to have to turn around is the demand side of thing. And that is all driven by the COVID-19 virus. People aren't driving, people aren't commuting on airlines. The petrochemical industry has slowed down tremendously. Nobody wants oil at this point in time just because of the shutdown. And so that's what we really have to watch. And as I watched one analyst say, the thing driving this almost entirely is gasoline. The need for gasoline is just diminished so much. So that's where we are. And these are worldwide events, but they affect us right here in Utah, even though we're so far removed from them. As I tracked Uinta black wax, we take a $12.50 hit right off the top. And then as we look at transportation and those costs to get it to the refineries, it's almost a zero proposition for these people to produce. So that's my concern, is that we'll see shut-ins tremendously increased as this profit margin out there is just approaching negative. And so at least the negative and the lower amounts of oil have bounced up and now they're positive, but I think we got a long road ahead of us. Any questions you may have? Or
John, I hope you would help the board understand how this has an impact on division finances as well.
Oh, sure. I do a monthly analysis looking at futures, and then I look at the decline of oil. Obviously, right now, we have no idea what our summer decline is going to be because we're always about a 2-month lag. We don't know. This production hit has not seen it in our data because they don't have to report for a month and a half after the end of the month of reporting. So with the decline of production, which is anticipated with the shut-in wells, with the diminished price, we basically get a 2 mil conservation fee. So that's $2 on every $1,000 sold. And that's how we are funded through our division. We do get some general funds, which they have generously given to us last time this hit us, but this is far worse and far more dramatic. So I think we're going to be severely curtailed with the funds we get from the tax commission off our conservation fee. And the things we got to watch for is production and price is what's going to be driving this. But, you know, back in the good days, we were given, $2-3 million back to the general fund. Now we're going to be well under our appropriation. So that's something we're going to have to watch. I think through 2021 fiscal year, which ends at the end of June, I think we should get by with what we've garnered in our first part of the year, but the next 2 years are going to be a tough go.
Thanks, John. Maybe to add a couple of comments on to what John said, it really is a perfect storm. I mean, not only did we have the international markets of countries fighting each other for their share of the market, but we had coronavirus hit, and I think this is going to have a severe impact on how business is conducted in Utah. So there are a couple of things that we're working on, hopefully to try to address this. One is that the Governor's Office of Energy Development has convened a working group that is having discussions weekly about what kinds of things can be done to help shore up the petroleum industry in Utah. I think everyone recognizes how important that is to both the consumer in Utah as well as the business aspects of what it means for state revenues and the gross state product, things like that. So that working group has had 2 online meetings in the last 2 weeks. We'll have a third one today, and hopefully we can find some things that we can address both at a state, regional, and national level that will help to give the oil industry some breathing room on this. The second thing we're looking at is kind of a generalized concept of what do our regulations make sense in terms of how to best support the oil industry. One of the things we're looking at is the extension of APD approvals. Right now, those are valid for a year. We're looking at taking those out to 2 years. We're looking at maybe streamlining some procedures of reporting. We've instructed our field staff to keep doing field work and keep maintaining a monitoring, but to use the same principles of distancing in their field work. So we are looking at ways to try to offer some somewhat of a relief for industry to continue doing business in Utah, but it is challenging when we can't predict what's going to happen next. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy, and John would be happy to answer any questions that you might have on this, but it really presents us with an uncertain future right now.
Board members, any questions? Again,
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. John, do you know what, if any impact, well, certainly it's had an impact, but what are you hearing from the Trust Lands Administration?
You know, they've been involved in these weekly calls as well. I saw a letter that indicated that they were not going to offer any royalty holiday, but that was 2 weeks ago. That may have changed now since oil prices have slipped even further. But I think that's a situation that they're having to pay attention to on a weekly basis, because you can give a lot of tax exemptions or holidays to the companies, but is that going to help them return to business when the time is right?
Thank you, John. I'm done, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to ask a question? I'm not seeing anyone. I have a couple. John, do you anticipate any massive emergency orders to shut in? Emergency request for an order to shut fields in, or to use that to protect the operator from and the producers from some sort of liability for having to shut it in because they have no way to get it to market?
I think one of the things that we have an advantage of in Utah is our shut-in well rules that have been in place now since the early 90s give a lot of latitude to shut in wells for justifiable cause. As long as the wells can continue to show that they have mechanical integrity, that they're not going to cause an environmental problem. We right now have it on the books where you can shut in a well up to a year and just notify us of that. Once that year mark hits, then we do ask for a more complete presentation from the companies to say, well, what is the rationale for shutting it in? Can you show that the well has integrity? And we take a look at that on a case-by-case basis. If that shut-in is approved for a long-term period, then they have all the way up to 5 years of shut-in before anything more is needed. And at that 5-year point, what the rule says is that you need to present a plan to plug and abandon the well, again, unless you can provide a rational cause. Now, I certainly hope that we wouldn't be seeing this price situation last for as long as 5 years, but I think our shut-in rules do allow some latitude to say, you know, you can shut it in for up to a year, no harm, no foul. But beyond that, we do require a showing from the operator. So I think what we would see at this point is not an immediate, complete, shutting in of wells. It may happen on a case-by-case basis, but the thing I worry about more is how many operators may be operating on a shoestring budget that are poorly capitalized, and those operators who may go into default over this. And those are the situations that we're going to have to watch very closely to make sure that we address those cases as they happen.
Well, that was an excellent report. This is Chairman Gill. That was an excellent report, Director Baza, and we really appreciate that. Any other questions of board members or any other comments from staff?
Chairman Gill, I'd like Paul Sledge or Tommy Thompson to stay on after we sign off. My earphones are not connected to the computer.
Okay. As I mentioned, thank you, Susan. Again, this is Chairman Gill. I mentioned that after the briefing session, we were going to do a test drive of how these rules and, how the guidelines are working so far for everyone. I do know this. Technical virtual meetings like this and lobbying are never easy. And if it looks easy, if it looks seamless, your staff has done an incredible job, because this is not easy. I talked to Paul Gage last, I think, 10 o'clock, 10:30 last night, and the night before, and the night before that. So, and I know he worked all weekend, and so did Carmen and Michael Christensen, and we're just very thankful that this is going really smoothly so far. Any comments from anyone that's on this virtual meeting? I'm going to take that it's working for you, and we'll take a short break. And we'll start again at 9 o'clock.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Point of order.
Yes.
The public comment period.
Identify your, pardon me, identify yourself, please.
This is Julianne. Ms. Carter. Point of order, the public comment period.
Thank you. That's the two-finger deal. So yes, this is the time and place for any comments from the public that would like to discuss an issue that's within our jurisdiction. I'm asking now for anyone that wants to comment to please make themselves known, identify themselves, spell their name, and give us their address.
Mr. Gill, Ms. Carter speaking. Can you hear me and see me?
I can, yes.
Okay. We provided a link to a public comment page on our meeting agenda. We advertised that we would accept comments until 11:59 p.m. on Tuesday, April 21st, 2020. 2 comments were submitted. Comment 1 was submitted on Friday, April 17th at 3:59 p.m. The comment field was blank. The second comment was submitted on Friday, April 17th at 4:20 p.m. The comment was, can we not submit a document? No further comments were submitted.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I did read the comment from Mr. Tony Hunter, and we'll discuss that at the appropriate time. Just to be clear, board members, all of the comments were asked to be supplied in writing. I'd forgotten that. And so we don't expect any oral comments to be made at this time. So with that, why don't we start as close to 10 as we can get everyone back here. Thank you for your participation. And then Ms. Davis, if you could let us know if your problem's been corrected.
It has not right now. I'm hoping for Tommy Thompson or Paul Gedge to help me.
Thank you. So we'll just stay on the line for that. Okay, thank you.